Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking something you probably have sitting in your junk drawer right now, a simple mint tin, and transforming it into a fully functional microcomputer. We are breaking down the absolute masterclass of engineering behind this DIY Cyberdeck project, sourced straight from the Exercising Ingenuity channel. So if you love taking things apart and maximizing literally every square millimeter of space, you are in for an absolute treat. Let's dive in.
I mean, seriously, have you ever finished a tin of mints and just kind of stared at the box? People have repurposed these things for decades, right? Sewing kits, little audio amps, survival gear, you name it. But taking an everyday object like this and envisioning a powerful miniature computing machine, that requires a totally different level of vision. And today we're going to look at exactly how to execute that vision step by step.
Now, this brings us to the ultimate challenge of this build. In the whole Cyberdeck community, builders typically reach for these massive, bulky Pelican cases or large ammo boxes. And yeah, they look incredibly cool, but they also give you plenty of room to hide all your messy wiring. Trading that spaciousness for a stealthy, pocket-sized form factor is a massive leap. Altoids tins are awesome because they're robust, nondescript, and totally DIY-friendly, but the space is severely constrained. Making this whole shebang work requires some serious engineering tricks.
To make this masterclass super easy to digest, we're going to break the project down into 4 distinct parts: essential Cyberdeck components, wiring the diode matrix, programming the keyboard firmware, and finally, the 3D printed frame assembly.
Starting right off with Part 1, Essential Cyberdeck Components, Building the Arsenal. So what exactly goes into this thing? Well, every single piece was chosen for its absolutely microscopic footprint. For the brain, we're using a Raspberry Pi Zero. The custom keyboard is powered by a tiny RP2040 microcontroller. To make the rig completely self-powered, there's a UPS hat paired up with a small battery, and for the display, a little 2-inch SPI LCD. But you know, DIY isn't always just plug and play. Getting that LCD to work actually required using a legacy version of the Pi operating system and tweaking some configuration files. And that UPS hat? Oh man, it arrived with some factory soldering issues. The creator literally had to run a quick jumper wire from ground on pin 6 over to ground on pin 9 just to get the power system functioning properly.
All right, moving right along to Part 2, wiring the diode matrix, crafting the custom input.
Before we start building, let's understand the theory here, especially if you're kind of new to electronics. A diode matrix is honestly magic. It's essentially a grid of buttons connected in rows and columns, with tiny little components called diodes sitting between each button and its row. Now, why do we care? Because it lets a microcontroller read way more buttons than it actually has physical input pins for. Instead of needing 50 separate pins for 50 keys, which is impossible here, the controller just scans the intersecting rows and columns to figure out exactly which key you pressed. It's absolutely crucial for tiny keyboards where space and pin counts are super limited.
So how do we actually wire this grid up? It's a bit tedious for sure, but totally doable if you follow these exact technical steps. First, you arrange your tactile buttons on a cheap proto board, and you cut that perfectly to the size of the tin. Next, you carefully solder a diode between every single button and its corresponding row. Finally, you wire those rows and columns directly into the inputs on the RP2040 microcontroller. Like I said, it's tedious work, but it ensures the controller knows exactly which row and column intersects the millisecond a key is struck.
Which brings us to Part 3, programming the keyboard firmware, bringing those keys to life.
You'd think programming this would require an advanced computer science degree, right? Actually, scratch that. It's incredibly accessible thanks to something called KMK firmware. KMK is vastly simplified and beginner-friendly because it's powered entirely by Python. You just install it onto the RP2040, tell the code exactly how you wired your specific rows and columns, and define your custom key map. That's it. It completely bridges the gap from physical solder joints to digital keystrokes. You flash it over, and suddenly those little clicky buttons on a proto board are typing real letters on your screen.
And finally, we hit Part 4, the 3D printed frame assembly, also known as the ultimate game of Tetris.
The creator hit the nail on the head when they summed up the assembly phase with this quote: "Getting everything in there was a real game of Tetris." And honestly, that might be an understatement. Fitting a battery, a Raspberry Pi, a UPS board, a display, and a USB hub into a mint tin requires absolute spatial perfection. Every single millimeter matters here.
To make it all work, you really need some professional mounting tricks. The real game changer here is utilizing a flexible 3D printed frame. It literally bends so you can slip it right into the metal tin, Once it's inside, it springs back, locking perfectly into place the moment you install the beige, vintage desktop-style front panel over it. It is brilliant. Heat management is also handled super cleverly by placing a thermal pad between the Pi and the metal tin itself, turning the whole outside enclosure into a heatsink. And what about the keyboard sitting up in the lid? They used a classic maker trick, mixing superglue and baking soda to securely mount tiny nuts right to the metal. It creates instant, rock-solid mounting points.
But get this, even with that custom frame, things were incredibly tight. To squeeze out those final vital millimeters, the creator had to pull off some extreme space hacks. They went in and completely desoldered the bulky LCD and UPS connectors, choosing instead to solder wires directly to the Raspberry Pi board. No way around it. And incredibly, just to get the lid to clear the new electronics and actually close, they had to solder scrap metal from another tin onto the hinges just to extend them. They even bent the front lip of the tin slightly to create just enough friction for it to securely snap shut. Talk about dedication to the form factor.
When all is said and done, you don't just have a novelty sitting on a shelf. Complete with these beautifully engraved labels for the charging and USB ports, it's a legitimate, pocket-sized prototyping workstation. Think about it. It's fully self-powered, it takes real mechanical typed input, has an external USB port, and most impressively, it features a 15-pin GPIO breakout right on the side. The creator even showed off using the command line to control a physical servo motor directly from this tiny box.
This project just completely redefines what we can build in such a constrained space. It proves that with a soldering iron and a little bit of ingenuity, you can literally pack an entire development environment right into your pocket. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If a simple mint tin can become a fully functional computer, what other everyday objects are just waiting around your house to be hacked? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and until next time, keep questioning the hardware around you.